Hello, Katie here. And welcome to 100-Year Jukebox.
Ellen here with 3 questions for today's Story Behind the Songs. Number 1. What was the first female band of color chosen by the USO to go overseas to entertain the still segregated troops? Number 2. Why was a musician arrested in Mississippi for not being black? Number 3. What band has been labeled the most prominent and probably best female aggregation of the big band era?
Hi, happy now. I'm Katie.
And I'm your co-host, Ellen.
Today we're taking a look
And a listen to a band of sisters.
now considered to be the best of all female jazz swing bands of the big band era.
The International Sweethearts of Rhythm.
Their story begins in the Deep South.
Oh, nice. I love a good origin story.
In the darkest days of the Depression, in deepest Mississippi, there was Piney Woods, a school for poor girls of color. Piney Woods director Lawrence C. Jones was an old hand at the fundraising needed to keep the school going. Following the example set by the Fisk Jubilee Singers, and by Booker T. Washington, Dr. Jones tried a number of different musical ensembles, such as the Cotton Blossom Singers and the Swinging Rays of Rhythm. Finally, inspired by, of all people, Ina Ray Hutton's all-girl, all-white Melodiers band, Dr. Jones created the Sweethearts of Rhythm, composed of Piney Woods schoolgirls. They traveled all over the Jim Crow South, practically living on their bus. As the girls ranged from 14 to 19 years old, they were expected to keep up with their lessons, even doing their arithmetic on the bus. They were carefully chaperoned and took their popular music seriously. Already, they were on their way to being a fine swing and jazz band. In 1941, the Sweethearts left Piney Woods and turned pro. And as one former member remembered, we got up in the morning and after breakfast started rehearsal. You know, like any job, you get up and go to work. But it was work the Sweethearts loved so much that later they would turn down lucrative offers to join bigger orchestras. They wanted to stay with their band of sisters.
I know how that goes. Is it true trumpeter Tiny Davis turned down Louis Armstrong's offer to join his band for lots more money?
Yep, and there were others as well. Even after the band broke up, some players preferred to form their own combos where they could play their music their way. But back to our story. Almost immediately, the girls found a wealthy patron and moved to Virginia. And almost immediately, they were in trouble.
What did they do? Park their bus next to a fire hydrant? Perform secular music on Sunday? Dare to wear flowers in their hair?
No, they did something really serious. They added members from other races.
What?
They integrated. It was the height of Jim Crow, and laws were strict about so-called race mixing.
Ugh.
So the band became the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, and a good thing, too, as their members would ultimately be not just black, but Latina, Caucasian, Asian, Native American, and more.
But still gals.
You bet, and still having to be extra careful wherever they went. Between gigs, they pretty much had to stay on the bus. Even so, every so often, there were local inspectors who checked their bus to make sure all the Sweethearts were colored. Usually the band was tipped off and they could sneak the white girls out the back. But this time, the inspector caught alto sax player Roz Cron, who had been told to say her mother was black and her father white. She almost got away with it until the cops checked her wallet and saw the pictures of her white parents. Rod spent the night in jail.
Not black enough, huh?
Thereafter, the lighter-skinned girls wore dark makeup on the bandstand, and they tight-permed their hair. Meanwhile, the band...
Wait! What happened to Roz?
The next day, she was released into the custody of an old family friend, a distinguished white lawyer. But she did go on to have a long, happy life.
Good.
back to the story. The Sweethearts' new management brought in several professional musicians, including 2 girls from the Harlem Playgirls, Ernestine Tiny Davis, trumpet, and Vi Burnside, tenor sax. They also acquired the services of Anna Mae Winburn, band leader, singer, who also played piano, guitar. Miss Winburn had led male aggregations, which included such players as Charlie Christian and Fletcher Henderson.
Wow!
Miss Winburn was the perfect choice to front the Sweethearts, in my opinion. Talented, smart, and a sleek, elegant beauty, leading, as they said in the day, the hottest band that ever raised the roof of this theater.
Oh, they had moved up to theaters then.
Yes, indeed. The Sweethearts played all the top black theaters, coast to coast. The Howard in D.C., the Regal in Chicago, the $1 Million in Los Angeles, and of course, the Apollo in Harlem. Their popularity just exploded.
What caused their success, besides the novelty of seeing how many members in the Sweethearts?
16 musicians, heavy on the horns, percussions, vocals.
But what was the secret of the Sweethearts' success?
Well, lots of people have offered opinions. The novelty of an all-girl, colored band filling in for guys gone to war, or maybe it was their charm and sex appeal, or they put on a great show and their driving and riff-laden numbers. But at base, I think it was their talent.
I think it was the whole package.
Yeah, you're probably right. After all, what other girl group had Count Basie or Louis Armstrong in the wings cheering them on? What other group broke the Howard Theater's box office record by attracting 35,000 patrons in a single week?
Wow.
It was probably stats like that.
And I think I heard there was a write-in campaign by African-American soldiers,
Which caused the USO to sign up their first black female entertainers. Beginning in 1935, the girls traveled all over Europe, bringing hope and music and joy to the still segregated troops. Jubilee, a section of the Stars and Stripes military newspaper, covered them a lot, especially when demand for the girls caused soldiers to line up 5 deep for a mile just to see their sweethearts.
But what happened to them? Did they stay in Europe or what?
Well, they came home to a rapidly changing America. The Sweethearts were victims of the times. The guys were back from war, and the women had to give up everything and get back in the home where they belonged. Everything started to unravel. The jobs and the money dried up. Life on the road became just too difficult. The girls had done a few soundies and shorts earlier. They had actually cut one record containing 16 numbers, but that was a long time ago. Now they were reduced to playing in Battle of the Bands exhibitions and appearing in annual jazz concerts. But there were no big markets left for large traveling ensembles. The last of the touring bands stopped in 1947. The big band era was essentially over.
If I recall correctly, 1947 also marked the first time the phrase rock and roll appeared in print. I guess it really was over.
The Sweethearts scattered to marriage and mundane jobs, with a few musicians holding on and still producing bold, good jazz.
Although the Sweethearts never made much money.
According to saxophonist Willie Mae Wong Scott, at their height, each Sweetheart made $15 a night, 3 nights a week.
Wow. Today, that'd buy you a latte grande and a roll. Maybe. Still, they must have really missed their music and performing.
Oh, wouldn't you? Especially all you'd worked for had been pretty much forgotten.
But everyone said the Sweethearts were a great band.
They were also women. You know how American popular music has always been a closed shop. No women allowed except singers need apply. Hey, women weren't even allowed into the Musicians Union until, 1968 or so? As for the all-male high citadel of jazz, only a very few women singers were ever special enough to pass their purity test.
This is getting really depressing.
But change was in the wind. Beginning in the late 60s on, historians and musicologists discovered the women of jazz, especially the Sweethearts. There were scholarly tomes, a beautifully illustrated children's book, a compilation album of the Sweethearts recordings, and a short documentary, International Sweethearts of Rhythm, America's Hottest All-Girl Band, 1986, featuring vintage clips and, best of all, interviews with some of the original members. And finally, in 2011, 6 of the surviving Sweethearts donated their memorabilia to the National Museum of American History, where the International Sweethearts of Rhythm collection is displayed in the archives.
And wait, don't forget that in 2012, the compilation album was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Recording Registry for being, quote, culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, end quote.
Pretty good for a little old band that started out in a poor girls' school in Piney Woods, Mississippi.
The Sweethearts really blew a hole in the jazz is only for men crowd, instead of 1940s critics opining, these girls play like men.
Modern musicologists say things along the line like, the music doesn't care who plays it, just as long as it's good. It's all jazz, and we need more people to play it.
Well, isn't that true of all music, especially American popular music?
OIJ agrees, and we know we owe so much to musicians like the International Sweethearts of Rhythm.
Thanks for everything, ladies.
You will always be our sweethearts. Happy listening to 100 Year Jukebox,
where
there's more to this than meets the ear.